tonight, as our hearts go out to the southern states like Louisiana, who are getting hit hard, I was listening to Agenda Free TV on YouTube while putting this together. They were doing a great job reporting on the situation unfolding. So that's Agenda Free TV. If you have a second, check them out. I was putting together this for SEDG, Solar Energy Technologies, and then ENPH for Emphase Energy, and then DTE, they're another energy company. So I wanted to put this together. So with SEDG, SolarEdge Technologies, if you bought into them back in 2015, then you've had a pretty good gain. I followed them through 2020 and paid close attention to them. Same with Northrop Grumman and some other ones I was paying attention to on where they were going with stuff that's now happening with infrastructure and our military, everything else. But when you look at energy itself, this company was one that, as I paid close attention, I figured it was worth doing a report on. They've soared quite a bit from where they were. They're right now at $291.25. As they came through this, they stayed pretty low going through the shadow bank in 2019. And on here I put where they were around when shadow bank was. They were about $80. So if you don't know about shadow bank, do some research, check that. In 2020, the pandemic low, they were close to about that same $80 mark. After the pandemic, when you came through, they just started taking off. As they took off, they hit a pretty good peak where they came back down, and that's towards that second arrow the arrow on the right. If you look towards that, you can kind of see where probably around like 225, they're staying above that line. And looking at that, when we come over to here, and you can see the mark at 228 on the right hand side. And I circled all the dips for them whenever they went into a valley and they kind of like went down. I've been kind of tracking where they were, and their lowest valley has been around that 204 on May 13th. That's when they hit, and since May, they've popped back up at the back end of 2021. So it's one of those stocks that I wanted to see if it could hold its position. And they had their Q2 earnings report, which was really good. They've continued to grow constantly. So I would say right now, anytime on a buy range would be 204 to 291, because they're definitely going to go over 300 in the future. If you look at it going back, I don't see them really dipping back below that 204 range at all. And since they've came down to that, going forward with inflation and where the market is, look at what just happened down south, energy is just going to keep soaring through the roof as there's a higher demand for it. With SolarEdge, I put this on a level break where after that 204 mark, they've been holding close to that 250 mark and staying above that. I would say that 256 to 283 on the right hand side would be about where I would expect them to stay. If they dip down, I wouldn't expect them to come back down too far below that 256 mark. I would say they're going to average at least 275 and above. They might come back down after they go up for a minute. But I would say with this stock, they would be well above the 300 mark going into 2022 You still have a few solid months left, and it won't take much for them to push up above that 300 mark. I would probably say about 3.25, 350 they might even be at the beginning of 2022. Here's some details on them. Year to date, though, they still have probably 110, 115% where they could still run up. So that's where I definitely think they'll go above 300. I think they could hit that 325, 350 because they've left themselves in a position to run. Even though they've left themselves in a position to run, the only negative thing I could say about this stock is it doesn't have a dividend yield. Some of the stats on it is their market cap being at over 15 billion. And on here it shows the weekly high for 52 weeks being at 375. And when we look at where they're at year to date and for the changes, they could afford to increase at 3% for a minute. So I could see them doing a daily run for a while and continuing to rise up. As they do that, they could definitely get back to that 375 mark, and it could possibly get over 400 by the time you hit 2022. So this is definitely a stock on the rise that's one to watch. When you look at analysis ratings, it definitely has a buy rate on it. When you look at earnings, their next expected earnings is on 11.2. And I would expect that they've beat all of their forecasts so far. In Q1, they kind of matched up of 2021. But for the most part, they've been rising above where their forecast is. And I would expect this next forecast to do the same. If it doesn't break even, it's at least going to be above where they were expecting it to be. The thing with this is their headquarters is in Tel Aviv. This company is one that was founded in 2006. They have employees count of over 3,000. So it is a established company that they do quite a bit of stuff and have a pretty good outlook on the future and where the market's going. And one that links up to this, and this one is another one that dates to 2006, is ENPH and Emphase Energy. Now, they took and I did a small chart on them, but they've risen up quite a bit over the last 2 years. And I drew a blue line in there so you can kind of see they've stayed well above that mark. I wouldn't expect them to go too much lower than 150 if they went back through another dip. But with this one, I would expect them to be able to rise up to possibly $250. And they're definitely in that competing market. There's a couple reasons I think that they could go up above 200 and 250 by the end of the year. When you look at going back to May, you can kind of see where they've went through. But they've kind of came back to this line where I would say probably around 160 might be their low and their dips right now. But if they continue to shoot up, their next shoot up would probably surpass the last one that was close to 196. So I'd expect the next time that they hit on a top peak that they'll be over 200. With this year to date, they're slightly above on the percentage, but they still going by a modest rate. If you look at, they might say they ran to 125%. They could have a good solid run. This is another one where the only negative I could really say about the stock is their dividend yield, that they don't have one. This on a 52-week high shows where They were at 230 on a 52-week high. The market cap on this is higher than when we looked at the SolarEdge technologies. They have a slightly higher market cap. So I definitely think that with them, they have potential to continue to grow and do good things. They have, on an analysis, they have a high buy rating too. Their next expected earning is on 10/26. Once again, this company is another one where on forecast, they've been above their forecast and they just continue to rise up. And I would expect on their next forecast that on 10/26 they would rise up again. And that's where you could see them. On this, it shows 230, and I was saying probably around like 250 they could hit, and there is a great possibility of that. They're a California headquarters. Once again, they were founded in 2006. They have a smaller employee count. When you look at DTE, it's another energy company. I put on here where they were on March 18th, 2020 during the pandemic low. And since then, they've only risen up on the bottom. I put 2021. And I would expect them to continue their climb going into 2022. Might be a little bit more affordable than something that's already broken that 200 and rising up there. I think with SolarEdge Technologies, they're definitely a company that you can see in 2022 go between 300 and 500. With Emphase Energy, I definitely think that they could reach that point where they're between 250 to 400. And with this company, I think that you could see this company definitely rise up and be up there between 200 and 300 in 2022. So I think with the energy definitely in demand, it definitely has some potential to it. One thing to watch on this is year to date. It is at 21%. So I wouldn't expect this to necessarily run as hard as the first two companies I mentioned. But with this one, it does have a dividend yield. So the upside on this is it may not run as hard, but it's definitely on an incline. And it definitely has that potential for other returns. So buying in now, you could get in for the next dividend. With this company, and I like the volumes on all these companies and where they're at. With this, their market cap is 23 billion. Their 52-week high is at 145. So if they took a solid run through this next reported, on their next reported is 1026 for Q3. I would expect them to kind of jump up. If they jumped up, you could definitely see this 145 again and possibly them go back above that. This company for DTE Energy is out of Detroit, Michigan. They were founded in 1995. They have a pretty good employee count at over 10,000. So these were three companies I just wanted to bring to attention that I thought might have some potential gain for those invested